2023 was an unprecedented year for wildfires in the Northwest Territories, with almost 70% of the population being evacuated to communities across the NWT and Western Canada. A state of emergency was called and 13 communities were evacuated. The Dene Nation calls for the full independent public inquiry to begin as soon as possible. Dettah authority and governance must be recognized and included in all response plans moving forward. This podcast was created from the webinar Dene Nation Speaks Out on the 2023 Wildfire Devastation and Why an Independent Inquiry is Needed. The webinar was streamed live on March 11th of 2024. In part 1, moderator Bill Erasmus introduces the Dene Nation's request for an inquiry into the 2023 wildfires. Then opening remarks are delivered by Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine, and panel speaker Francois Paulette discusses climate change and the need for traditional knowledge protocols.
There's been a call for an inquiry into the fires that took place in the NWT last year. Right now, there are other inquiries that are happening, but they're quite different than this one that the Dene Nation is asking for. The city of Yellowknife has an inquiry, but it's just looking at the municipality of Yellowknife, how they responded and so on, and the public is not involved. The other one is the territorial government. They're looking at their own inquiry, and that will not include the public either. So what the Dene Nation wants is an inquiry that includes everyone that was impacted, everyone in the north that had to evacuate, and to hear from them. So that will include elders, young people, women, children, and give people an opportunity to improve on the situation so that when we get into the next fire season, which is not far away, people are able to respond in a more organized way. So we will begin. We have Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine on the line, who will explain the reason the Dene Nation is calling the inquiry. Go ahead, Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine.
Songo tong kan le dege ten dega jo seukin de onde da gota tatin de kau de ke onde dege ten de ka is it ka kan de tong de da met un da ta dega ja kan de kun de ge se kan de da ja shu jo masine ne de sineta. Good afternoon, Dene. I ran into Dene in the city the other day. And he says, make sure you open this with my opening remarks from the time I was on the radio, he says. And he would say, hello, my friends and relatives. Today is special. And so I wanted to thank Dene in the city for reminding us that it is a way that our life is that is always special. And the other one is I ran into another cousin, Dene, on the move. And he's been traveling quite a lot. And in my travel, I run into him. And he also really gives me an update on what's going on in Dene and elsewhere. I also like to thank our other cousin, Dene Wrights. He was really concerned about the way that we need to move forward, particularly with the spirit and intent of the treaty relationship as understood by our elders. So with that, I'm really thankful that our relatives out there are out and about. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that just listening to the voices of our elders, what they say is that they say and they share truthfully, and they say it's not going our way. That's why it's been difficult. And so it made me think about the work that our leaders have and still are working on. And one thing that I saw is that even though we're there and we're shifted so that way it could be going our way, one thing I noticed is that the talks, they pass each other. And so in reflection, particularly from the standpoint of the natural disasters that we were confronted with last year and the years before, is that the people from here, the original nation of families, needs to be fully involved, needs to take the lead on the assessments of the impacts and of the major natural disasters. that brings together all the members of the original nation of families, municipalities, and also organizations from across our Dene and as far as the whole of Turtle Island. This and these disaster events cannot be understood in a vacuum. And this seems to be going on. You look at what Yellowknife is doing, you look at what the GNWT is doing, is that they just wanted to keep it within their parameters. And that's not acceptable for me. There was 14 communities got devastated there last year. There was over 70% of the people here in Dene were evacuated. So it has to go beyond their parameters. The reason why I say that is that our families matters and the context matters. Our family context matters. And so if you listen to what, or you understand what our elders are saying, is not going our way. That's why it's been difficult. It needs to be our way, so that way it would not be so difficult for us, which means that the family, the way that they need to move forward, the way they've been, their context matters. And so one of the things that I had a chance to do is go through a neighboring upriver people, and they came up with October 2018 report. It was done by the Athabascan Tribal Council and also the Athabascan River Métis and also the Friendship Center movement there. So one thing that they did say is that it says that it exposed a lack of federal, provincial, territorial, municipal leadership. It resulted in a disjointed Indigenous management system. And this is exclusively centralized in terms of municipal, provincial, and territorial planning and decision making. And you could also see that element here in our homes and our community. And then there is also excessively localized, which is excessively narrow in terms of exclusion. So our family is not entirely involved. And then the other one they talk about is that, and I think this is where you could really see it here, is that within this institutionalized environment, the original nation of families, particularly here, the Dettah, operates in a parallel and disconnected fashion and struggle with capacity constraints. And you'll notice that in your offices is that there's inconsistent and fragmented support from federal, provincial, territorial authorities. So you could see that there is these authorities are often too far away. They lack the resources and they don't understand us. They lack knowledge of local institutions that we have. And the wildfire revealed the depth of this institutionalized disconnect. It's really something that you see. This is what we hear. So what I see moving ahead is that the inquiry, this independent audit, is a very essential element for us for moving forward, because it is an important assessment tool that requires an independent lens with a broad perspective to focus inclusively, so that it has the ability to see what happened and to lay out the full picture of measures that is needed and identified to undertake the necessary shift towards an improved emergency management that ensures that our family are protected, they're safe, and that each members of the family, their well-being is taken care of as a high as a priority. That's the reason why the family context is important. We all need to be included. We all have experiences, and we have these things that we need to look at how we could be able to share. Through this inquiry, this independent audit, it will be able to really see what the commonalities are. And this is where we could be able to have a template as to how we need to move forward. And there's going to be some unique things that come out that we need to also look at how we could be able to address it in a good way, so that way our family is protected, that they're safe, and that our well-being is really considered and moving forward. So these are the things that I've I've been thinking about. Just would also at the same time, I would like let people know that at the AFN level, as a regional chief, I was assigned the portfolio of the emergency management, and I met with the ministers, the territorial, provincial, and federal ministers on February the 20th. And what I shared with you, this is what I had shared. There's also additional things that I also shared. Also met with the Inuit president, also met with the Métis National Council president, and I also engaged in a really full day, full orientation from the AFN. Last week, I was attending the AFN second forum on emergency management, and these are the things I also shared with them. And what I had really emphasized there is that we need to really have a good team so that we could be able to support and assist the families out there. And so we need to have this coordinated effort with the families, and it needs to really happen at the ground level. And it's really important the leadership there is supported and assisted. And we need to look at how we could be able to supplement the support and assistance that they need moving forward. So they need to be the ones to take the lead on the ground there in their communities. So this is the way that I've been thinking. This is the way that I've been hearing. And I've been really looking at how we could be able to network together so that way we could be able to support and assist the leadership, the work that they're doing in the community at the ground level. So this is what I like to share with you. And I like to say, Masi.
So now we're going to move over to Francois Paulette. I'd quickly like to introduce Francois, who's our first speaker of the panel today. We have 3 panelists, and then we're opening it up to other leadership. Francois is an advocate of treaty and Indigenous rights. Francois has spoken to international audiences on human rights, spiritual healing from colonial oppression, and environmental protection. Welcome, Francois. So we'd like to hear from you. All of the panelists that are speaking have all been evacuated last year due to the wildfires. So we'd like to hear what your experiences were and why you think it's important for an independent audit.
Thank you to you, all of you. I'm going to get right to what I want to move on. I don't want to talk about my experience, what I experienced last with the fires. Climate change has been impacting our people in many ways that we really know. I think the people have to take climate change seriously. What has happened last year, the years before, you hear the fires in BC. Now, there are monies that the federal government have on climate change. AFN has a budget on climate change. AFN has a budget on emergency talk. Now, how are they negotiating these funds that are going to them? I think we need to really expand on climate change. This talk is all over the world, not just here. This inquiry that is being proposed is a good idea. I'm kind of a little embarrassed by the premier from Hay River. He had to evacuate that town twice last year. Does he not get the picture? The city of Yellowknife, the biggest city, because Yellowknife is where the government center is. So they evacuated it, not necessarily, and they came back, but the chiefs asked for an inquiry. We are not back in the 70s. If it were, we would be in control. It's as simple as that. I want to say that the city of, or the town of Enterprise, 80% burnt. They asked for an inquiry. So I think what we need to do as leaders, the chiefs, people of interest, before in the 70s, if we were faced with some emergency, we would travel to Ottawa to seek funding. And I think the Dene Nation, the chiefs need to do that. I just heard the national chiefs say, well, he traveled to Ottawa. But we must go there with a plan. We must go there with a written plan of protocols that our people put together on climate change, and there is funding there, and we need to attack that, and we need to get into that. The AFN are not the ones that are impacted by these fires, it's the people in the communities. So I get kind of irritated that a lot of money is spent, but nothing goes to the communities. One, because I don't think we really have a plan how to move this ahead. And if we use climate change as one of the biggest factors in why things are the way they are today, the territorial government also gets a budget on climate change. The territorial government doesn't even have a traditional knowledge policy or protocols. Absolutely none. Because people have never been asked to come together on traditional knowledge protocols. Never. I'll just make a point. I was trying to refrain to talk about the fires. There were three groups: the Alberta government here, firefighters; Parks Canada; the territorial government. The chief here for Smith Landing was always in touch with the Alberta firefighters. I took part in a big ceremony that included all the firefighters, also from Parks and also from the territorial government, because it was a request of the chief to do that. There was a fire northeast of Fort Smith, and that was kind of going out of hand. The fire down here was kind of slowing down. Apparently, the Alberta government said, okay, we'll help you. We'll put some manpower into that. The territorial government's response was, we don't need you guys right now. There was no working relationship. And from the stories that I hear, the territorial government was the least of any help in the area of firefighting in the north. So I'm kind of embarrassed of the territorial government again, that they're not wanting to work with Indigenous First Nations people. This land is the land of the Dene. We share it with non-Dene, and that comes from the treaties. So back in the time of, in the 80s, things worked differently. The chiefs had a huge control, and they had a fire management plan at that time. They don't have a voice like Jim Burke, the late Jim Burke, that was instrumental in doing a lot of things for people. Who do we have in a territorial government to lobby on our behalf? No one. So I think the plan needs to be set. The inquiry, climate change, and a trip to Ottawa. If you got to help AFN get involved with this, get them involved. Anyway, that's my concern. I just want to thank you all for listening to me.
That was Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine and panelist Francois Paulette. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear the full webinar, visit the Keepers of the Water Facebook page or YouTube channel. And don't forget to rate us and subscribe. Miigwech.